वाइज लर्निंग एकेडमी। वेलकम टू अब इंडिया करेगा इन्वेस्ट कैंपेन। ये हमारा वीकली वेबिनार इनिशिएटिव है फ्रॉम ग्रो। आज का टॉपिक है सेक्टरल परफॉर्मेंस एंड 2021 का आउटलुक क्या है। To discuss on this, we have a very interesting personality and a very well-known fund manager, Mr. Manish Gunwani from Nippon India Mutual Fund. So he's the CIO for equity investments. So he would be joining us to talk about the sectoral performance and what to expect in 2021. The flow of the program is going to be, पहले मैं बात करूँगा on what has been the historical trend on sectors. Subsequently, you would hear from Mr. Manish on what is that you can expect from 2021. And और हमारे next speaker होंगे Mr. Shikhar from Groww. ये तीनों सेशन होने के बाद we'll open up the platform for questions. आपका कोई भी सवाल है तो please post करिएगा. We'll try to answer most of the questions here. So yes, I think let's begin here. देखिए, कोई भी पोर्टफोलियो का एक परफॉर्मेंस जब हम देखते हैं, उसका वन ऑफ द की परफॉर्मेंस एट्रीब्यूशन रहता है, वो है सेक्टरल सिलेक्शन। क्योंकि कई टाइम देखेंगे, कुछ साल में कुछ सेक्टर्स बहुत बुरा कर रहा है या कुछ सेक्टर्स बहुत अच्छा कर रहा है। सो यू डोंट वांट टू बी इन दैट पर्टिकुलर ट्रैप ऑफ बैड परफॉर्मिंग सेक्टर्स। तो इसीलिए सेक्टर सिलेक्शन करना और सेक्टर्स का वो जो बिहेवियरल ट्रेंड के बारे में जानना बहुत जरूरी हो जाता है। लुक एट 2020 इटसेल्फ। जब आप मार्च और अप्रैल में जब कोरोना का प्रॉब्लम इनिशियली जब हमने एम्ब्रेस किया, तो दैट टाइम एफएमसीजी फार्मा सेक्टर्स डिड वेरी वेल। एट द सेम टाइम सब्सिक्वेंटली जब आप देखेंगे फार्मा सेक्टर कंटिन्यूड परफॉर्मिंग, बट एट द सेम टाइम सेक्टर्स लाइक ऑटोमोबाइल्स स्टार्टेड डूइंग वेरी वेल। तो हम ये एक ब्रॉडर हिस्टोरिकल ट्रेंड देख के विल ट्राई टू एनालाइज व्हाट सेक्टर्स वुड परफॉर्म एट व्हाट टाइम। दैट्स द इंटेंशन व्हाट I would be covering in my piece. So to cover on this topic broadly, what I have done is Bombay Stock Exchange का करीब 18 broad sectors का historical performance लिया हुआ है, starting from 2006 till 2020 November end का data इसमें consider किया हुआ है. Okay, so out of these 18 sectors, what has been some of the sectors which has done really well? जब आप कुछ बेस्ट परफॉर्मिंग सेक्टर्स देखते हो, राइट फ्रॉम 2006 से लेके 2020 अभी नवंबर तक, इसको हमने ब्रॉड मार्केट से भी कंपेयर किया हुआ है, दैट इज बीएसई सेंसेक्स एज वेल एज बीएसई 500 के साथ कंपेयर किया हुआ है। सो ऑल दी सेक्टर्स लाइक कंज्यूमर ड्यूरेबल्स, एफएमसीजी, banking index, healthcare, finance, all these sectors have been the best performing sectors in terms of returns. Just जो भी benchmark है उससे जो भी ज्यादा रिटर्न दिया हुआ, I think the best performing sectors have been in this consumer durables and FMCG. Okay, so हमने बोला 18 sectors है, out of which only about 8 sectors have actually outperformed the broader benchmark. Okay, then बाकी sectors का क्या हुआ होगा? If you look at दूसरे जो sectors है, almost about 10 sectors have underperformed the broader benchmark, that is Sensex or BSE 500 जब आप देखते हैं, some of these sectors like metal, power या telecom has given almost like let's say 3%, 2% or 1% kind of returns starting from 2006 to 2020. अगर आप sectoral selection में गलत हो गए, then your overall portfolio returns would have been like let's say brought down by these underperforming sectors, right? So हम यहाँ पे रेशियो देख रहे हैं almost 50-50. Okay, 50% of the sectors have overperformed and 50% of the sectors have underperformed, not just for short term, even in the long run for a period of 15 years हम देख रहे हैं। मतलब 2006 calendar year से लेके 2020 का calendar year देखेंगे, we are talking almost about 15 years here. तो सिर्फ रिटर्न ही नहीं, इसमें रिस्क कितना इन्वॉल्व है वो भी देखना जरूरी है। ये हम जनरली म्यूचुअल फंड्स में या कोई भी इन्वेस्टमेंट टूल्स के बारे वो जो रिस्क मेजर करना चाहते हैं, वी यूज स्टैंडर्ड डिविएशन एज द रिस्क मेजरमेंट टूल। 2006 से लेके 2020 तक रिस्क कौन से सेक्टर में सबसे ज्यादा है? फॉर एग्जांपल, जब आप यहाँ पे मेटल एज ए सेक्टर देखते हैं, तो उसका स्टैंडर्ड डिविएशन जो है सबसे ज्यादा है। मतलब रिस्क मेजरमेंट टूल जो है या रिस्क नंबर जो है वो सबसे ज्यादा है। मतलब मेटल सेक्टर सबसे ज्यादा वॉलेटाइल रहा है फॉर अ CAGR व्हाट इट हैज जनरेटेड ऑफ अबाउट 3%। look at reality sector for a negative 9% return, almost 53% risk है. But at the same time, when you look at FMCG sector, ये बहुत interesting है to see that FMCG tops in the form of returns, but at the same time, in terms of the risk, ये सबसे lowest risk involved है in the last 15 years of history. तो ऐसे एक combination ढूंढना बहुत जरूरी है. It is not just about very high return, सबसे ज्यादा return दे वो भी जरूरी नहीं. हमें ये दोनों का कॉम्बिनेशन हमें देखना बहुत जरूरी हो जाता है. दैट रिस्क कम हो या थोड़ा भी ज्यादा है और पीयर ग्रुप से थोड़ा कम है चलेगा, बट रिटर्न्स ये दोनों का कॉम्बिनेशन हमें देखना बहुत जरूरी हो जाता है. तो ये रिटर्न्स और रिस्क को क्या इन्फ्लुएंस करता है, व्हाट इन्फ्लुएंसेस दिस रिस्क रिटर्न कॉम्बिनेशन, एंड इसका कोई और रिलेशनशिप हो सकता है क्या, कैन वी रियली ट्राई टू अराइव एट अ trend here, so is there a pattern, इसको कोई पैटर्न हो सकता है, या can we connect the dots, like so ये पैरामीटर्स को हमें समझने के लिए we need to understand that sectoral performance जो है वो इकोनॉमिक परफॉर्मेंस या इकोनॉमिक साइकिल से काफी like let's say closely जुड़ा हुआ है. जनरली आप एक्सपर्ट से किसी से भी पूछेंगे इन्वेस्टमेंट प्रोसेस कैसे होता है, we say that फंडामेंटल एनालिसिस करिएगा. फंडामेंटल एनालिसिस से पहले हम इकोनॉमी के बारे में पढ़ते हैं, देन इंडस्ट्री. सो once subsequently after industry is when we select a company. Okay, so company analysis करके then we do the investment process. So it is a top down approach जो हम बोलते हैं. जब हम इकोनॉमिक स्टडी करते हैं, along with studying economic parameters like GDP हो गया या इन्फ्लेशन, फिस्कल डेफिसिट, करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट, ये सारे चीज हम समझते वक्त ये भी समझने जरूरी हो जाता है दैट इकोनॉमिक साइकिल कौन सा चल रहा है. जैसे कि अभी लास्ट 2 क्वार्टर जब आप देखते हो इस साल का, ओके, क्वार्टर 1, क्वार्टर 2, दैट इज स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम अप्रैल टिल सितंबर, फर्स्ट टाइम इन द हिस्ट्री वी वर इन द रिसेशन, और इन द मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री वी वर इन रिसेशन. मतलब as economy we experienced negative GDP growth, and then subsequently थोड़ा बहुत हमारा overall basic numbers improve हो रहे हैं. स्टॉक मार्केट्स तो अच्छा जा ही रहा है राइट फ्रॉम मई जून ऑनवर्ड्स, बट इकोनॉमिक रिकवरी भी थोड़ा बहुत हमें ग्रीन शूट्स दिख रहा है. सो देन सम पीपल माइट से दैट ओके वी माइट बी इन द रिकवरी साइकिल. तो वैसे अलग अलग इकोनॉमिक साइकिल्स होता है, रिसेशन हो गया या रिकवरी, बूम, ऐसे ये अलग अलग इकोनॉमिक साइकिल्स में कौन सा सेक्टर अच्छा करता है, दैट इज ऑल्सो देखना बहुत जरूरी है. ओके, फॉर एग्जाम्पल जहां पे आप देखेंगे लास्ट सेगमेंट इधर रिसेशन में इट इज सेक्टर्स लाइक हेल्थ केयर और यूटिलिटीज, एफएमसीजी, ये सारे सेक्टर्स अच्छा करने लगता है. इवन फॉर दैट मैटर इंडियन कॉन्टेक्स्ट में इवन आईटी ऑल्सो हैज डन रीजनेबली वेल. बट एट द सेम टाइम जब आप एक्सपेंशन की तरह देखते हैं, दैट्स द टाइम व्हेन यू सी दैट थोड़ा बहुत कैपिटल इंटेंसिव इंडस्ट्रीज जो है वो अच्छा करने लगते हैं, लाइक बैंकिंग, फाइनेंशियल्स, ओके, एंड देन so these are some of the sectors which will actually start doing well. Even for that matter automobile, consumer durables, ये सारा sectors जो है in the early expansion cycle में अच्छे करने लगते हैं. So this is one of the relationship जो आप जुड़ सकते हैं, कौन सा सेक्टर कौन से इकोनॉमिक साइकिल में अच्छा करेगा. तो what we will just try to quickly understand is 2006 से लेके 2020 तक, ये 15 साल में हमारा ओवरऑल इकोनॉमिक साइकिल्स ब्रॉडली क्या रहा. 2008 में स्लो डाउन था, ग्लोबली रिसेशन था, बट इंडिया के लिए स्लो डाउन था. बट वेयर एज 2009 ऑनवर्ड्स वी स्टार्टेड सीइंग द रिकवरी फेज. 2013 में अगेन इंडिया फेस्ड फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस एंड सब्सिक्वेंटली इन 2020. 2020 एक ऐसा यूनिक ईयर है बिकॉज we saw both within same 1 year, that is we saw the quick dip in the month of March, April, and then subsequently the recovery phase also continued after say June, July onwards. So let's just look at the broader trend और यहाँ पे कुछ सेंस करने की कोशिश करते हैं that different economic cycles में कौन से sectors अच्छा perform किए हैं और हम क्यों बोलते हैं say sectors like FMCG और IT would do well और उसमें risk क्या involved है. Okay, so I would like to share another Excel sheet with you. We spoke about FMCG, right? यहाँ पे देखिए 2008 में, okay, we saw overall equity markets during that year, markets going down almost by 60%. But in that FMCG का जो है, that is that has fallen down only by 14% or almost close to 15%. But at the same time, if you see reality sector or metal, consumer durable sectors have been worst performing sectors. Okay, look at 2011. In 2011, FMCG has given only about 9.5% return, but still that's one of the best performing sector in the form of returns, right? Matlab, overall markets niche gaya hai, but subsequently at the same time, only FMCG as a sector done very well. So, and look at 2018, again, the best possible return in that particular year was 25%. FMCG gave about 11%, close to 11%, but worst performing sectors like reality, telecom, ये सारा sectors जो है, that has again given -30, -40. So what is the interesting part of FMCG here? FMCG जो है, जब पूरा market बुरा करता रहता है, that's the time FMCG really stands out. But when you see a great market rally, that's the time FMCG starts lagging. Okay, that's why if you see June, July onwards, FMCG lag karne laga, because when you see the good years, probably it is or in the recovery phase, it is those sectors like capital goods, consumer durables, or basic materials would start doing very well. Okay, same. Look at 2009, look at 2014, or even for that matter 2020 जो है, I think that really emulates हम जो बात करना चाहते हैं. अगर ये पूरा एक्सेल शीट को आप देखते हो, एक चीज बहुत क्लियर है, not one single sector is been in number 1 or is been in the top quartile, मतलब top 4 में जो है, out of 18 sectors, top 4 में कोई भी sector जो है consistent नहीं है. You will always see these ups and downs. Okay. Look at utilities in 2007 in top, whereas in 2008 it is at the bottom. Okay. Subsequently, it is again remained in bottom and then started going up and down. So you will always see these extremities. मतलब ऊपर है और completely नीचे है. So that's why it's important for us to understand economic cycle versus sectoral performance. So look at 2008. 2008 में जो है FMCG अच्छा किया, telecom, healthcare, or even for that matter, IT did well. Look at 2013 again, IT, tech, healthcare did well. Look at 2020, it is healthcare, tech, IT. Okay, so during these slowdown phases is when these couple of sectors will start doing very well. But जब market recovery होता है, look at 2009 or 2014, you will see consumer durables or for that matter automobile. These are the sectors which start doing very well. So all I would just try to like what I want to sum up is look at economic cycles और उसके साथ sectoral performance को connect करने की कोशिश करिएगा, और 2021 में आपका क्या outlook है और experts क्या बोल रहे हैं. Are we going to be in recession, or are we like let's say in the recovery phase, or recovery complete हुआ है, are we going to get into the boom phase? Based on that आप अपना sectors चुनिएगा. Okay, so on that note, I would like to conclude my part of the session. I would like to invite Mr. Manish to give us an outlook on 2021 and what are the sectors to invest.
Thanks, Karthik, for that insightful start to the webinar. Now I will just use a small presentation. Yeah, so thanks everyone for taking out time for this presentation. So I'm going to talk about the market and the sectors which we think will do better from here. So let me just start with a brief presentation on the market. Essentially, I'm just going to talk about some of the positives and concerns which are there in the market. So just to start with, as was just discussed, it is important to know where we are in the business cycle. Now, the business cycle is typically represented by the global GDP growth for the entire global economy, and a good metric to track how the GDP growth will pan out. So a leading indicator जैसे बोलते हैं कि जो पहले दिखाई देता है कि कौन से डायरेक्शन में इकोनॉमी जा रही है, that is PMI. PMI is a survey where you measure what is the confidence of the people in the economy. PMI में a score above 50, मतलब 50 के ऊपर अगर स्कोर होता है तो that is expansion. 50 के नीचे जो स्कोर होता है वो रिसेशन माना जाता है. तो जैसे ये चार्ट में दिखाया गया है कि the PMI has recovered after the COVID shock quite sharply. If you compare to 2008 crisis, for example, it was slightly longer in time versus what has happened with the COVID crisis. एंड टिपिकली जो ग्लोबल जीडीपी ग्रोथ है वो 6 महीने के लैग से पीएमआई को ट्रैक करती है. तो अभी इंडिया में भी जैसे रिसेशन हुआ है, नेगेटिव जीडीपी ग्रोथ है, बट जैसे ये चार्ट दिखा रहा है कि ग्लोबल जीडीपी ग्रोथ एक दो क्वार्टर में वापस पॉजिटिव टेरिटरी में आ जाएगा. तो क्लियरली वी आर इन रिकवरी मोड, और ये रिकवरी एक्सपेक्टेशन से मैं कह सकता हूँ कि काफ़ी बेटर है, क्योंकि मार्च अप्रैल मई में ऐसा लग रहा था कि ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी को बहुत टाइम लगेगा, डोमेस्टिक इकोनॉमी को टाइम लगेगा, बट both global and domestic economy have recovered far faster than most of us thought. So obviously growth is positive for stock market, and this is the first positive. सेकेंड इज ये ग्रोथ क्यों आई है. वन ऑफ द बिग रीजंस इसलिए ये ग्रोथ आई है क्योंकि जो डेवलप्ड मार्केट्स है, यूएस, यूरोप, जापान, ये लोग ने काफ़ी स्टिमुलस स्पेंडिंग किया ना. स्टिमुलस के वेरियस फॉर्म्स होते हैं. एक तो फिस्कल है, जो मतलब गवर्नमेंट की जो स्पेंडिंग है. दूसरा मॉनेटरी है, जो इंटरेस्ट रेट कट होते हैं, या government buys bond, or the central bank buying government bonds to keep interest rate low. So जो लेफ्ट चार्ट है उसमें एक काइंड ऑफ इंडेक्स दिखाया गया है कि पॉलिसी स्कोर इंडेक्स. तो आप देख सकते हैं कि 2008 के क्राइसिस के तुलना में relative to 2008 also, this has been a very aggressive stimulus, multiple times of the stimulus in the financial crisis. जैसे यूएस का हम बात करें तो यूएस का फिस्कल डेफिसिट is going to reach anywhere between 15 to 20%, which is the highest since World War II. So clearly there has been unprecedented stimulus which has helped the economies recover, and also has helped the stock markets recover globally. Other way to look at stimulus, if you see the chart on the right side, and ये इंडिया के लिए ज़्यादा important है कि जो लिक्विडिटी या कैपिटल फ्लो डेवलपिंग मार्केट्स में आता है उसका कोरिलेशन डॉलर से काफ़ी हाई है. तो अगर जैसे पैनिक में डॉलर अप्रिशिएट करता है, और अगर रिस्क ऑन है तो डॉलर डिप्रिशिएट होता है. तो इफ यू सी आफ्टर अप्रैल, a lot of it driven by the actions of US Fed, we have seen the dollar depreciate against almost all the currencies, and especially against emerging currencies. So if you see yuan has appreciated almost 8-10% against the dollar. India actually, the rupee has been one of the weaker currencies versus emerging currencies. We have not appreciated that much, which is also, I think, a good thing for the Indian economy. क्योंकि जब रुपी वीक होता है तो एक्सपोर्टर्स के लिए काफ़ी बेनिफिट हो जाता है. सो both in terms of fiscal monetary stimulus and the fact that dollar has depreciated, overall has led to a situation of very high liquidity globally. थर्ड पॉजिटिव, ये थोड़ा स्ट्रक्चरल बात है, कि lot of people consider India as a developing country, which is obviously true. But one thing is, इंडिया का जो सेविंग्स है वो काफ़ी accumulate होके इंडिया के हाउस होल्ड की बैलेंस शीट काफ़ी स्ट्रांग है, even compared to some of the developed countries where the savings is not, by culture, is not a big habit. So if we see India, by very rough estimate, because real estate is difficult to value, but if we add real estate, gold, bank deposits, life insurance saving, mutual fund savings, the provident fund savings, all that could be anywhere between 400 to 700 lakh crore. और जो बोरिंग है, जो होम लोन ऑटो लोन का जो बोरिंग है सिस्टम से, वो खाली 30-40 लाख करोड़ है. सो ऑलमोस्ट 10:1, 12, 15:1 का रेशियो है बिटवीन एसेट टू लाइबिलिटी. Just goes to show how much potential there is for India to spend if the sentiment is right, and also if need be to use financial leverage, that is borrow money to spend if the sentiment is correct. So a lot depends on sentiment, because top 10, top 20% of Indian households definitely have the savings to spend. Fourth positive right now is that the interest rates are the lowest in 2 decades. So this is just corporate bond का जो borrowing cost है, उसका चार्ट है लॉन्ग टर्म. सो आप देखेंगे 2002-3 के बाद फर्स्ट टाइम वी आर सीइंग होम लोन्स below 7% in many cases. In many cases, good corporates or NBFCs are borrowing 3-year money at 5.5-6%. So this is a big positive for everything. So it helps the economy, it helps valuation of the stock market, because your price to earning multiple is influenced by interest rates. Because opportunity cost देखेंगे तो आप FD देखोगे, FD में obviously अभी post tax FD is probably 3-4% right now. So interest rates being low are good from many levels. Finally, earnings, which have been a big issue last 5-6 years, कि last 5-6 years में क्या हो रहा था कि जो भी earning estimate है starting of the year, by the end of the year the actual earnings were turning out to be 5-10% lower. But the recent quarter has been probably the best quarter for earnings in the last 10 years, because across sectors companies have surprised positively. One is because growth was better. Two is commodity prices, especially oil being weak, has definitely helped gross margins. Third, things like advertising, travel, companies have saved a lot of money. So in a quarter when GDP growth was negative, the profit before tax growth has actually been 16%, which is obviously great. Of course, sales growth was much lower at 2%, but the fact that it was positive itself has been a good surprise. So there is a good chance that after 5-7 years of earnings being less than expectation, we might be entering a long earning cycle where they overshoot expectations. Just coming to the risk quickly, to me the biggest risk is something on the health side, that if कुछ vaccination rollout में problem हो जाए, या virus का जो strain है that is not responding to the vaccination or something like that. So we just saw last week that UK there was some variant, and that gave a scare. But as of now, it looks like the vaccine will work against that variant as well. But I think next 2-3 months, this is going to be the key risk. Second, slightly long-term risk is overall countries are becoming more closed and protectionist. मतलब they don't want to import. सबको अपने कंट्री में जॉब्स क्रिएट करने के लिए ज़्यादा इम्पोर्ट के अगेंस्ट सेंटिमेंट है, which will lead to fall in trade. And for poor countries, fall in trade is not a good thing because poor countries typically use trade to grow rich. So for that, this current environment over last 5 6 years, where there is a lot of control on imports, is a bad thing for a developing country like India. Two risks which always are there with India is one is that oil prices, if they go out of control on the way up, and two is just like any developing country, अपना जो capital flow है, a lot depends on the US interest rates. If they spike up, then typically the capital flow to India gets cut. So though these are the main risks to the stock market. So the next section is just about valuations. So this is a rough summary of Nifty valuation on price to earning and price to book. Now, as we can see, we are definitely on the higher side. But I think the price to earning multiple was only one part of the story. Like if you, as I said, a lot depends on interest rates as well, because ultimately when you're looking at stocks valuation, you're comparing it to other asset classes, and other asset classes interest rate is obviously reflective of debt, which is the other big asset class. So this is an asset allocation model which we have, which works with equity between 30 to 80%. And although markets have gone up a lot since March, it is still showing 57%, which is roughly the midpoint. One thing you have to consider is, as I said, the earning cycle has been weak for last 5 7 years. So one is that there can be very healthy earning growth for last 2 3 years, for next 2 3 years. And also when we look at the market, a lot of us remember the last 6 months, but when we are looking at a lot of stocks from March 2018 level, which was the peak of the mid and small cap bull market, a lot of the mid and small caps especially are much below those levels. So if you take a 3 5 year view, Nifty has not done anything great. It's done about 9 10%. So from that sense, the markets are not frothy as some people get a sense from the last 4 5 months of market movement. So overall, our view is consumption and exports, we think will continue to lead India's recovery. Capex could take some time to come. And from a 2 3 year perspective, when we balance that, while near-term price to earning multiples are high, but the fact that the economy is at a low base, earning cycle is at a low base, generally we feel that low teen kind of returns for next 3 years can happen on a 2 3 year basis. So just to talk about the sectors we prefer, tying in with the business cycle. So I think the business cycle is in early phase of recovery. Market has discounted some part of the recovery, and now we are looking. The market is looking at the second or third part of the recovery, where slightly capex intensive stocks or capital heavy stocks like financials, industrials, commodities, they do well, uh, because all the capital light sectors like IT, pharma, FMCG, or even the slightly market leader kind of cyclicals like a Maruti or HDFC Bank, they have obviously done very well in the last 5-6 months. So the themes we like right now, one is we believe that along with economic recovery, a lot of sectors there is also um, a trend that the larger players are becoming larger and consolidation is happening due to multiple reasons like technology, compliance, access to funding, use of digitalization, etc. So on that theme, also there is a compliance angle in GST, DMON, whatever, because of which small players in a lot of industries have got hit. Um, so on that theme, we believe the large private banks and building materials like pipes, paints, etc. These two sectors will continue to do well, and the stocks, most of the stocks here in these sectors we like. Second, as the business cycle progresses, there are some typically these sectors work late in the economic recovery cycle. So as I said, while the economy is actually in the early stages of recovery, the market has discounted some part of the recovery, and now we feel that the late cyclical stocks have a good chance of working, which are things like commercial vehicle and real estate developers. Then on a slightly more long-term basis, structural kind of theme, the shift which is happening in manufacturing from China to India, which is playing out in sectors like chemicals, electronics, etc. Now, these stocks have done well for last 5-6 years based on this trend. But we see that with this new geopolitics about US and India moving closer, and in general, the developed world, including Europe and Japan, moving closer to India versus China, will continue to drive this theme. Uh, on the slightly defensive side, I think the IT industry is seeing a bit of a resurgence. A lot of people felt that the growth rate in IT would keep dropping, but even in a tough year like 2020, the sector has surprised. And interesting part is the mid cap IT names are actually now beginning to grow faster than the large cap, which is a bit counter to what was happening for last 10-15 years. um, and from that perspective, there are some good choices in IT. General insurance is again an underpenetrated sector which we think will keep growing for many years, so that is another defensive sector which we like. So with that, I'll wind up my presentation, and hand it back to Groww.
Thanks, Manish. Hello, everyone. Manish, can you stop sharing your screen?
Yeah, just one sec. Has it stopped sharing?
No, I can still see it.
Yeah.
Now it stopped.
Cool.
Great. Thanks. हेलो एवरीवन, आप सबका वापस अब इंडिया करेगा इन्वेस्ट में स्वागत है. जैसा कि मैं हर हफ्ते आके आपको बताता हूँ, I'll be talking about the Groww as a product. हमारे पास क्या क्या हैं, हम क्या क्या ला रहे हैं, and क्या क्या features हैं. And before that, we always talk about how Groww was started. So, I mean, there are multiple reasons, but the biggest reason is that in our country, हमारे जो investors होते हैं, उनको काफी limited options दिखती हैं investment के. सबको FD पता है, सबको गोल्ड पता है, और जिनके पास पैसा ज्यादा होता है वो रियल एस्टेट में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं. लेकिन स्टॉक्स, बॉन्ड्स, म्यूचुअल फंड्स ये उतने पॉपुलर नहीं है. सो ऐसा हमारा नहीं मानना है कि म्यूचुअल फंड्स और स्टॉक्स ही सही इन्वेस्टमेंट्स हैं. सब तरह के इन्वेस्टमेंट्स आपके पोर्टफोलियो में होने चाहिए. लेकिन सिर्फ एफडी या सिर्फ रियल एस्टेट या सिर्फ गोल्ड में इन्वेस्ट करना ज्यादा, इट वुडंट बी कॉल्ड प्रूडेंट. उसे ज्यादा अच्छा इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं कहेंगे. तो ये जो सारे ऑप्शंस होते हैं, इसको आराम से, आसानी से अवेलेबल कराने के लिए
इन्वेस्टर्स को ग्रो को स्टार्ट किया गया था. आई विल क्विकली शेयर माई स्क्रीन सो दैट यू कैन सी माई प्रेजेंटेशन. हाँ, सो जैसा कि आपको पता होगा बहुत लोगों को, ग्रो पे इन्वेस्ट करना आप आराम से साइन अप कर सकते हैं अपने फोन या लैपटॉप के थ्रू, और ये पूरा प्रोसेस 100% पेपरलेस है. अगर आपकी केवाईसी नहीं हुई है तो वो भी हम करा देते हैं. जब आप ऐप खोलेंगे तो इस तरह का स्क्रीन दिखेगा. ऊपर 3 टैब्स होंगे, स्टॉक्स, म्यूचुअल फंड्स एंड गोल्ड. म्यूचुअल फंड वाले टैब में ऐसा स्क्रीन दिखेगा. ये एक्सप्लोर स्क्रीन है. सो दिस इज द म्यूचुअल फंड टैब इन द एक्सप्लोर स्क्रीन. वहां पे आपको पॉपुलर फंड्स दिख जाएंगे, कुछ कलेक्शंस दिख जाएंगे, और नीचे ऐसे ही म्यूचुअल फंड से रिलेटेड एक्सप्लोर स्क्रीन पे आपको ऑप्शंस दिखेंगे. इसी तरह अगर आप स्टॉक्स पे टैप करेंगे तो ये स्टॉक्स का एक्सप्लोर स्क्रीन है. और इसी तरह आप अगर गोल्ड पे टैप करेंगे तो ये वाला गोल्ड का एक्सप्लोर स्क्रीन है. अभी फिलहाल हमारे पास ऑगमेंट डिजिटल गोल्ड ऑप्शन ही अवेलेबल है. बहुत जल्दी हम और भी सारे ऑप्शंस लाएंगे तो आपको वो भी ऑप्शंस यहाँ पे गोल्ड टैब के अंदर दिख जाएंगी. म्यूचुअल फंड, जब आप किसी म्यूचुअल फंड का पेज खोलते हैं, म्यूचुअल फंड पे टैप करते हैं तो कुछ इस तरह के पेज पे आएंगे. ये म्यूचुअल फंड का पेज होता है जहां पे आपको उस म्यूचुअल फंड से रिलेटेड सारी डिटेल्स आराम से दिख जाती हैं. एंड इट्स वेरी इन डेप्थ, जैसे रिटर्न्स, एक्सपेंस रेशियो, फंड मैनेजर का नाम, उस फंड की जो परफॉर्मेंस रही है वो उनके कंपेटिटर के कंपैरिजन में कैसा है, वो सारी डिटेल्स आपको इस पेज पे मिल जाएंगी. इसी तरह ये स्टॉक पेज है, यहाँ पे उस स्टॉक से रिलेटेड सारी इंफॉर्मेशन आपको आराम से मिल जाएंगी. और इसी तरह ये गोल्ड का पेज है. जैसा कि मैंने कहा था, अभी गोल्ड का एक ऑप्शन है, जल्दी और भी सारे ऑप्शंस आ जाएंगे. बहुत लोगों को ये पता नहीं होता, बट म्यूचुअल फंड्स में आप सिर्फ मंथली इन्वेस्ट अगर करना चाहें तो वो कर सकते हैं, लेकिन आपके पास वन टाइम का भी ऑप्शन होता है. जरूरी नहीं है कि आप हर महीने इन्वेस्ट करें. ये डैशबोर्ड है. डैशबोर्ड मतलब इट इज द प्लेस वेयर योर इन्वेस्टमेंट्स रिसाइड. आपने जो जो इन्वेस्टमेंट करे हैं वो आपको यहाँ पे दिख जाएंगी. फॉर एग्जाम्पल यहाँ पे भी 3 टैब हैं, स्टॉक्स, म्यूचुअल फंड्स एंड गोल्ड. तो म्यूचुअल फंड्स पे जब आप टैप करते हैं तो आपको म्यूचुअल फंड्स दिख जाएंगी. आपके आपके जो इन्वेस्टमेंट्स हैं उनके रिजल्ट्स दिख जाएंगे. जैसे कि आप यहाँ देख पा रहे होंगे, यहाँ पे कुछ कुछ म्यूचुअल फंड्स के नाम मेंशन्ड हैं. जब आप किसी म्यूचुअल फंड के नाम पे टैप करेंगे तो आप एक और पेज पे जाएंगे जो कि उस म्यूचुअल फंड और आपके बीच के सारे ट्रांजैक्शन का डिटेल देगा. तो आपका फोलियो नंबर, आपका एवरेज नैव, कितने बार पैसे निकाले हैं आपने, कितने बार डाले हैं, वो सारी चीजें आपको यहाँ पे मिल जाएंगी. इसी तरह अगर आप स्टॉक्स और गोल्ड पे टैप करेंगे तो आपके जो स्टॉक्स या गोल्ड के इन्वेस्टमेंट्स हैं उसकी डिटेल्स आपको दिख जाएंगी. इसके अलावा ये जब आप किसी म्यूचुअल फंड पे टैप करते हैं तो इस स्क्रीन पे, जैसा कि मैं कह रहा था, ऊपर आपको दिख रहा होगा इन्वेस्टेड. यहाँ पे इन्वेस्टेड ही है सिर्फ, लेकिन अगर आप रिडीम या सेल करते हैं तो वहां पे वो भी दिख जाता है. सबसे नीचे 2 ऑप्शंस दिख रहे हैं, इन्वेस्ट मोर अगर आप उसी म्यूचुअल फंड में और पैसे लगाना चाहते हैं, या सेल या रिडीम अगर आप उस म्यूचुअल फंड से पैसे निकालना चाहते हैं. एक और जो मैंने देखा है, पीपल हैव दिस मिसकंसेप्शन. लोगों को एक गलत आइडिया रहता है कि किसी भी म्यूचुअल फंड में आप एक ही एसआईपी स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं, या अगर आप वन टाइम इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रहे हैं तो सिर्फ वन टाइम इन्वेस्टमेंट ही कर सकते हैं. ऐसी कोई बात नहीं है. आप किसी भी म्यूचुअल फंड में जितना चाहें एसआईपी स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं, जितने बार चाहें उतने बार वन टाइम इन्वेस्टमेंट भी कर सकते हैं. अगर सिप चल रहा हो तो उसमें भी आप वन टाइम इन्वेस्टमेंट कर सकते हैं, और अगर वन टाइम इन्वेस्टमेंट किया है तो उसमें भी आप सिप स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं. ग्रो में पेमेंट के सारे ऑप्शंस हैं, यूपीआई ऑप्शन, यूपीआई एप्स, नेट बैंकिंग, नेफ्ट, आरटीजीएस, आईएमपीएस. और इसके अलावा ये एक बहुत अच्छा बहुत पॉपुलर ऑप्शन है हमारे प्लेटफॉर्म पे, इंपोर्ट एंड स्विच. इंपोर्ट मतलब अगर आपने किसी और प्लेटफॉर्म या किसी और के थ्रू अपने म्यूचुअल फंड में इन्वेस्ट करा है और आप चाहते हैं कि वो ग्रो पे आ जाए, तो आप उसे इंपोर्ट कर सकते हैं. इसके लिए अपने डैशबोर्ड पे जाइए, म्यूचुअल फंड डैशबोर्ड पे, और नीचे स्क्रॉल कीजिए, वहां पे आपको इंपोर्ट फंड का ऑप्शन दिख जाएगा. ये भी 100% पेपरलेस होता है. काफी आराम से आपके म्यूचुअल फंड्स एक ही जगह आ जाते हैं, ताकि आप एक जगह से आराम से मैनेज कर सकें अपने सारे म्यूचुअल फंड इन्वेस्टमेंट्स को. अब मान लीजिए आपने स्विच कर लिया, इंपोर्ट कर लिया, और आप ये रियलाइज कर रहे हैं कि आपके जो बाहर के इन्वेस्टमेंट्स हैं म्यूचुअल फंड्स के, उसमें कुछ म्यूचुअल फंड्स ऐसे हैं जिसमें आप जो रेगुलर प्लान के हैं जिसमें आपको कमीशन देना पड़ रहा है और आप चाहते हैं कि वो कमीशन से आप डायरेक्ट प्लान में स्विच कर जाएं, तो ये स्विच का ऑप्शन यूज करके आप अपने रेगुलर प्लान को डायरेक्ट प्लान में चेंज कर सकते हैं। आपके पास कोई भी क्वेश्चन हो तो आप हमारे को ईमेल लिख सकते हैं support@grow.in पे। इसके अलावा ऐप और वेबसाइट में हेल्प एंड सपोर्ट सेक्शन के थ्रू आप अपने सारे डाउट्स क्लियर कर सकते हैं, और अगर वो हेल्पफुल ना रहे, अगर आपको उससे रेजोल्यूशन ना मिले, तो आप हेल्प एंड सपोर्ट सेक्शन से टिकट रेज करके चैट या कॉल भी कर सकते हैं। Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. YouTube is, again, as I keep saying, a very good resource for new learners. वहाँ पे जगदीप सिंह हर हफ्ते 2 से 3 वीडियो लगाते हैं, and he tries to cover mutual funds and stocks. जब उनका फोकस स्टॉक्स की ओर ज्यादा रहता है, तो अगर आप नए इन्वेस्टर हैं और आप सीखना चाहते हैं तो आप प्लीज यूट्यूब चैनल पे हमारे यूट्यूब चैनल को फॉलो करें। इट्स ग्रो यूट्यूब चैनल नाम है उसका। Couple of other things, we are one of the highest rated investment apps in India. Practically सारे म्यूचुअल फंड्स हैं हमारे पास, 1 करोड़ से भी ज्यादा यूजर्स हैं हमारे पास, सेबी और एम्फी रजिस्टर्ड हैं हम, और हम 256 बिट एन्क्रिप्शन का यूज करते हैं हम, और हम एक ISO सर्टिफाइड कंपनी भी है। With that, I come to the end of my presentation. Now the three of us will take questions that you have left in the comment section. अगर आपके पास अभी भी कोई क्वेश्चन है तो आप प्लीज वहां पे डाल दीजिए। वी विल ट्राई एंड आंसर एवरी सिंगल क्वेश्चन दैट इज आस्क्ड।
Yep. So thank you so much, Mr. Manish, for giving us the detailed outlook on what to expect, and then prior to that itself, where do we stand with respect to economic cycle? And thank you, Shikhar, for taking us through the utilities of Groww as an app, and then and how easy the functionality is. Okay, I think we'll start with the questions. Mr. Manish, I'm sure you really gave us a nice insight. But it would be really helpful if you can just quickly sum up 2021, what sectors, maybe in few words, which sectors you think one should focus on?
So as I mentioned in the presentation, one, I think private banks, two is commercial vehicle plays, three, IT, I think slightly defensive sector, but I think the growth is surprising people. Fourth is cyclical sector, especially where consolidation is happening. So real estate and building materials. I think these are segments where we are seeing a lot of shift from unorganized to organized, along with the fact that after many years again, the real estate market seems to be getting some traction. So there is a cycle as well as consolidation theme playing out. Then from a more structural perspective, this China plus one theme, which talks about manufacturing moving from China to India. Already chemicals and electronic manufacturing stocks have done well, but as the PLI scheme is rolled out to auto and textiles, I think those sectors, wherever we'll have to see the fine print of the policy, but I think those are sectors. Essentially, I think manufacturing itself is a good theme to look at. So these are some of the sectors we are overweight on, and we expect them to do well in 2021.
Sure. So, but if you are to go by the trend, historical trend, can we expect some kind of traction in consumer durables as well?
I think so. Typically, again, when an economy does well, obviously consumer discretionary spending picks up. So consumer discretionary has multiple elements to it. One is auto, two is more the electronic goods, etc., and also retailing. Now, retailing has got impacted by COVID, but in fact, I think that's a good sector to look at because The COVID impact, obviously, assuming that the vaccine rollout is fine, which at this point seems to be happening pretty well, I think retailing will come back. Multiplexes may come back. So those are good sectors to look at.
Sure. Thank you. So Shikhar, the next question is to you. मान लीजिए मेरा एक already SIP चल रहा है with one bank. So now I have switched over to another bank account. So how do I switch the bank account for the same SIP? It's more of an operational challenge.
Yes. Yeah. So you will have to cancel the SIP first, and then when you restart the SIP, आप नया बैंक उसमें लगा सकते हैं, because once an SIP or mandate has been set up, वो उसी बैंक से काटता रहेगा. आप अपना प्राइमरी बैंक चेंज भी कर देंगे तो भी वो पुराने बैंक से ही काटेगा. So it's best that you cancel the existing SIP, start a new SIP, and in that use the other bank that you have been wanting to use.
Okay, sure. Thank you. अगला क्वेश्चन मेरे लिए है. I think what's the minimum amount that should be invested in mutual funds to cancel the SIP? देखिए, all the investments happens in open-ended mutual funds. So मतलब आपको complete flexibility रहता है. There is no such minimum criteria that अच्छा इतना SIP चलना ही है उसके बाद ही आप cancel कर सकते हो. It's completely up to your discretion. आप कभी भी शुरू कर सकते हो, कभी भी stop कर सकते हो. Suppose if you stop the SIP, जरूरी नहीं आपको पूरा पैसा निकालना है. You can also just retain the money as it is. पैसा उधर ही छोड़िए, and then you can wait for it to grow. So all these flexibilities are up to you. Look at your current financial situation. आपका financial urgency कितना है, या आप कोई financial goals meet कर रहे हो, उसके हिसाब से ये सब decisions लीजिएगा. Just by looking at last 1 or 2 months of performance of funds, that should not be the reason for why you should be stopping the SIP. Okay. So yeah, I think that's about stopping the SIP. Next question is to Mr. Manish. So what's your take on healthcare sector for 2021? With already a good amount of rally which has happened in the sector, do you think it would sustain? And also there is now we know which are the vaccines manufacturers who are coming out and all that.
So healthcare has had a very good 2020 in terms of stock performance. And obviously, from a long-term perspective, it is a good sector because as countries become richer, people spend more and more on healthcare. But when I'm looking at 2021 from a 1 to 2 year perspective, starting from today, I don't find too much good risk reward there at this point of time, because when the business cycle is recovering and slowly we are moving into the later phases of the economic recovery, I think the more cyclical sectors will tend to do better in the next 1 year or so. So while someone who has a 3 to 5 year perspective can obviously remain invested in healthcare, but from 1 to 2 year perspective, I feel that the slightly more cyclical sectors will do better.
Sure. Thank you. I think it makes sense. We've already seen enough juice coming out of this sector. I think expecting similar performance in the short term may be very doubtful. Yeah. Thank you. Shikhar, I mean, next question to you. Two famous products, fixed deposits and US stocks. I know that ये सब web platform में already available है, but someone wants to know that ये कब probably the app version also, when will you see the rollout?
So we are expecting, obviously it's not happening this year anymore, it's just कितने दिन बाकी है. Hopefully it's definitely happening in 2021. Which part of 2021? That hopefully as soon as possible, because the practice that we follow at our company is that usually we try and make sure the product is absolutely smooth, everything works perfectly fine on the website, and then it's much easier for things to work on the app. So at the way it is presently, we found that it works very flawlessly on the web. So it should be available on the app very soon. But I would strongly encourage that you can always go on the app website and invest. You don't need to wait for it to come to your app.
Sure. Thank you. Mr. Manish, I think one is what's your view on Nippon Pharma Fund? I'm sure it is very similar to their view on the pharma sector, what you have. Someone wants to know Nippon Pharma Fund ka view kya rehna chahiye. That is one, and then maybe also IT sector may do you really see a good amount of appreciation happening for 2021 with say even if we look at global markets like US markets, if you see FANG stocks have already I think they kind of reached the astronomical valuations. IT, what's your take, sir?
Right. So you're correct. Nippon Pharma Fund, as I said, basically for long-term investors, a great product. If you see 10, 15 years CAGR, it's given very good returns. And as I mentioned, healthcare is a sector where more and more spending will be directed towards healthcare as people become richer. So definitely healthcare is one of those buy and hold kind of sectors where you should have certain allocation. But the tactical allocation for this year, I will not recommend very strongly in the pharma fund, because I think let's say banking and some other consumer discretionary sectors could see better returns as the economy keeps gathering momentum. IT, I have a slightly more positive view because essentially what seems to be happening today is that given this whole shift towards digital, in a sense, the industry seems to have got a second wind. So the general impression for the IT services industry was it had seen its best days and the growth rate was coming down. But now the growth rate seems to have stabilized. Even it may go up a bit because the traditional services which were uh, degrowing, they I think have become a relatively small part of the portfolio. And these new technologies portfolio of most companies, which is things like artificial intelligence, cloud, etc. That part of the portfolio is growing at 20-30%. So overall growth seems to be picking up. Um, Interesting point is also that it's a very broad-based growth pickup, that even the mid cap seems to be doing quite well. And on a free cash flow to enterprise value basis, IT is still quite relatively attractive versus the FMCG, etc. So I think IT can be a dark horse for 2021.
But would you see our Indian unicorn IT companies coming out with an IPO, because we are already
Yeah.
seeing?
So that is a different part of IT, which is the internet side. That I believe a lot of IPOs are in the pipeline. At least 6 to 7. Policy Bazaar, Flipkart, Nykaa, they apparently are toying with IPOs this year, 2021. So that will be very interesting as well.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. I think IPO frenzy has really caught on to people. I think people are really waiting for good
Yeah,
number of IPOs. Yeah.
we saw that Vector IPO doing very well today, actually.
Yeah. I think last 2-3 IPOs have been very successful.
Yeah, Gland and Vector, Burger King.
Burger King, yes. So Shikhar, how do we increase the SIP amount? I think that's one target everyone should keep. 2020 khatam ho raha hai, 2021. Every listener, I personally think you should aim for a minimum 10% increase or 20% increase in your SIP amount. What markets would do, कौन से sector में invest करना चाहिए? I think we should leave it to Mr. Manish, because that's his full-time job. आपका और हमारा full-time job है that how much money we earn, it's in our hands. I think that's what we should focus on. So yes, Shikhar, I think not only to that one individual who is asking this question, everyone should focus. So how do we increase the SIP amount?
Right. I think we get this question nearly every week हर सेशन में हमारे पास एक क्वेश्चन आता है. So the simple answer is you can जो भी आपका एडिशनल अमाउंट है उसको लेके आप एक और SIP स्टार्ट कर लीजिए उसी म्यूचुअल फंड में, या आप पूरी SIP को कैंसिल करके दोबारा से स्टार्ट कर लीजिए. योर ओल्ड SIP विल रिमेन इन इट्स, जो भी आपने अमाउंट इन्वेस्ट किया है ऑलरेडी इन्वेस्टेड, दैट विल रिमेन एज इट इज, नो चेंज टू दैट. It's just that your new SIP with the higher amount that will start.
Sure, great. So let me take the next question. Which is a better investment option, SIP or lump sum? इसको मैं एक छोटा सा एनालॉजी देना चाहता हूँ. मतलब एज अ बैट्समैन आपको सिंगल्स या डबल्स लेना चाहिए, या यू शुड गो फॉर अ सिक्सर और बाउंड्रीज. देखिए, हमेशा तो सिक्सर और बाउंड्रीज तो नहीं मार सकते, बट एवरी बॉल अगर आप थोड़ा डिलिजेंटली खेलेंगे तो यू कैन कीप प्लेइंग वंस एंड टूज. बट एक लूज बॉल जब आता है then go for a 6. So there is no comparison to both. कौन सा better रहेगा? You need both. Same logic applies to SIP versus lump sum. SIP जो है हमारा रेगुलर इनकम जो आता रहेगा उसमें सेव करके इन्वेस्टमेंट का वो डिसिप्लिन लेके आता है, राइट? वो मिनिमम 1,000 रुपए SIP और 500,000 रुपए SIP जो भी हम या 10,000 का SIP जो भी हम करते हैं, that really brings in the discipline. It won't pinch us our investment wallet. Over years जब आप देखते हो, it would have created wonders. But lump sum really acts as a booster. आपका overall portfolio जो है उसमें booster चाहिए, then lump sum really is helpful. So yeah, but considering current market conditions, probably you can follow STP route for lump sum investments. That could be one matured way of dealing with the investments. But मेरा ये मानना है दोनों बहुत जरूरी है, SIP and lump sum. You should aim for both. Okay. I think very interesting question, sir. I think जो लोग बहुत पढ़ते हैं, या people who study, read a lot, I think they would have these questions. Is it the right time to book profits? I think I would like to ask this question to Mr. Manish. Even I would love to know, should I really now slowly start exiting equity systematically?
Not really, because see, March से आप देखेंगे तो market has obviously gone up a lot, and it's not a distressed valuation right now. But as I said, if you look at 3, 5, 7, 10-year returns on Nifty, at least 3, 5, 7 years, I think not more than 9.5%. So it is with broadly line on, in fact, slightly less than nominal GDP. So I don't think we are in bubble territory yet. Yes, near-term earnings look, the price to earning multiple is high, but I think after many years, the economy is giving signs of a very broad-based recovery, where exports is doing well, real estate is doing well, consumer discretionary, car sales, everything seems to be picking up at the same time. A lot of the real-time indicators like electricity consumption, diesel demand, etc., after many years are seeing positive traction across these variables. So I don't think it's a time to under allocate to equities. Maybe it's not the time to change your asset allocation and increase asset allocation to equities, definitely. But I don't think, as I said, maybe in 2-3 years you should probably expect 12-13% kind of returns, that kind of time. See, with lower inflation, I think there needs to be a bit of realistic expectation on returns overall across asset classes, because what is happening globally is that, and in India as well, inflation is falling. So last 30 years, if Sensex has done 15%, next 10 years, you should expect Sensex will do only 11-12%, because last 20-30 years, we were living in 8-9% inflation world for consumers. Now we're living in a 4-5% inflation world. So I think that part also has to be kept in mind.
Sure. But whatever said and done, Mr. Manish, I think, like I said, जब जो लोग कुछ ज़्यादा देखते हैं charts and all that, in last 20 odd years में we have never seen 35 PE. But market price divided by earnings, will it mean that as and when the earnings pick up, this ratio will get adjusted?
Yeah, I do expect that over next 2 years, PE will actually drop. And the earning growth has to be 20-25% for at least 2 years. उतना तो आना ही चाहिए. So I think broad consensus is Nifty earning will go from 470, 480 to 600, 625 in FY22, which is more than 25% growth. And in fact, as of now, the earning estimates are actually getting upgraded because Q2 was very good. So let's see. I'm quite hopeful that next 2 to 3 years will be very, very strong on earnings.
Is it also because the overall costs are coming down? Because a lot of it, interesting economic data is suggesting that in the first 2 quarters where companies have reduced the employment and the number of employees, the overall profitability has gone up.
Yeah. So some part of that cost control obviously will not last because see, you can cut ad expenditure when no one is moving out, but when things start normalizing, you will have to start ads. You will have to pay salesmen who are in the field to move around. So some part of the cost will obviously come back, but also I think that see over last 5-7 years, a lot of industries not only had a macro growth issue, there were very industry specific issues like telecom. There was a price war among top three players. Pharma had FDA issues. So a lot of these issues came together over last 5 years, such that the Nifty earning growth was only 4-5%. So I think what will happen now, hopefully, is that you're getting macro growth. You're getting macro growth coming back both globally and domestic. Along with that, a lot of these bottom-up factors also, these industries are turning around. So you're seeing telecom pricing is going up. Pharma, a lot of these FDA issues are behind. The US generic pricing is improving. So these again will come together and hopefully, see in the very long term, your corporate earning growth has to match nominal GDP growth. So for 5-6 years, you're below nominal GDP growth. I think there could be 2-3 years where you are much above nominal GDP growth. So I do think that there is a good chance you may see strong earnings.
Sure. So thank you so much, Mr. Manish. It's always a great experience to pick your brain. So we really got to learn a lot. So thank you, Shikhar, for giving us the perspective. So I hope this session valuable raha. Please leave your comments on the video. It is uploaded on the YouTube channel. You can look at it in the Groww channel. So thank you for participating. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.